Let's now take a look at some of the day's other global headlines. And Israel has passed legislation that now imposes the death penalty as the default punishment for Palestinians convicted of killing Israelis. The bill passed with 62 votes in favor. The man behind the bill is far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who was seen celebrating after the vote with a bottle of champagne inside the chamber. It's prompted criticism from the foreign ministers of Germany, the Netherlands, France, Italy and the UK. While the law comes into effect in 30 days, the legislation could still be struck down by the Supreme Court. As Noor O'Day explains from Ramallah, the law is intended to target Palestinians.
It is imposed on a specific group, and hence the discriminatory part of it, Neve. Now, this law has been the subject of much debate since it was first legislated. And I have to say that it wasn't just proposed by Itamar Ben-Gvir. He had support even from the opposition. So there is no point of principled opposition to this law. Some of the objections we heard during the discussions had to do with technicalities, with political, points and scoring points, like Benny Gantz, for example, a former Minister of Defense and a prominent opposition figure who objected to this bill, not because he opposed killing Palestinians, because in his words, I've killed more Palestinian so-called terrorists than all the members in the plenum today, but his point of objection was that this would be helping Itamar Ben-Gvir. Now, this law will be challenged in Israel's High Court. Human rights organizations and two Palestinian and Israeli parliamentary blocs will be challenging this law. But the fact that it passed, the fact that the Israeli Prime Minister voted in favor of it despite international objections, the fact that the discussion around it was not about discrimination.
To discuss this further, we're now joined by Suhad Bishara, who's the legal director of Adalah, an independent human rights organization and legal center in Israel. She's live from Berlin. Thank you so much, Suhad, for your time. What is your reaction first to Israel's passage of this new death penalty law? How do you view its timing and its intent?
I mean, it's very worrying, but let's keep in mind, of course, the timing is not coincidental. However, let's keep in mind that the death penalty law was part of the coalition agreements signed between Jewish Power and the Likud in December 2022. So this was expected somehow in this regard. And I think the past events in the past 2 years just accelerated this process tremendously. It is a very worrying law for many reasons. One, death penalty in and by itself is inhuman, it's cruel. It runs against international trends. Most countries in the world have abolished, either formally or de facto, death penalty. The UN observers have recommended to all countries to abolish. We have seen all European countries abolished based on the European Convention on Human Rights. So Israel is going against all of these trends, against the international law in this regard. A second matter regarding this law, that it is designed in a way that it encompasses only Palestinians, in the sense of that if you have, let's say, a Jewish Israeli citizen who commits an intended killing against a group of Palestinians, regarding whether we're talking about in the occupied Palestinian territories, in Israel itself, under what is defined under Israeli law as a terror act, he or she won't be under the threat of death penalty, because the law says that these offenses need to be within the scope or the aim to negate the existence of the state of Israel.
Very important that you highlight that distinction. What I also find very worrying here is that, as you said, this will target Palestinian prisoners only, but these are also prisoners who, in many cases, haven't had a fair trial, weren't given due process, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we're talking about Palestinians in the West Bank, these are mostly tried in the military courts in the West Bank, a process that lacks minimum guarantees for fair trial. The percentage of convictions is above 99% in the military courts, while Israeli settlers are tried under Israeli law in Israeli civil courts. So you have a very clear distinction in this regard.
The timing, you said, is also very significant, Suhad. This comes amid intensified violence, settler violence in the occupied West Bank, mass arrests also there, and also Israel's war on Gaza, which is continuing despite a ceasefire which is said to be in effect there. Do you see this law as part of a deliberate strategy of wider repression on Palestinians?
I mean, definitely. I don't think we can read this law out of context. I mean, there is a wider context of what's happening in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. I mean, most of the crimes committed by Israeli settlers in the West Bank towards Palestinians are not tried. People are not convicted. People are not brought to court. And there is a general system of impunity that protects against all of these crimes, and this law comes and says we will continue with that. We will continue with trying Palestinians in a separate manner, in a different manner, in a differentiated manner, while supporting and continuing to grant impunity to any Israeli perpetrators in this regard. The law is very worrying. Right. It's one of the most racist laws that were enacted so far. We identified as it has very clear foundations of an apartheid law. We petitioned last night to the Israeli Supreme Court, and we hope that we will manage to cancel it.
I was going to ask you about that. The Association for Civil Rights in Israel has already filed an appeal to the Supreme Court. Do you have any faith in the Israeli legal system and legal institutions to reverse this measure?
Yeah, two petitions were filed before the Supreme Court yesterday, including the Israeli human rights organizations, Adalah, and some parliament members. I'm hopeful in the sense that we have very strong legal grounds against the law in terms of its constitutionality or unconstitutionality, and in terms of international law. It is the first law that is enacted that applies directly to the Palestinians in the West Bank. Again, we're speaking about occupied territory. Israeli parliament is not the sovereign and has no power and no authority to enact laws that apply to the Palestinians in the West Bank. So I think there is a good chance that it will be cancelled.
Thank you so much for talking to us. We appreciate your time. That was Suhad Bishara of Adalah joining us there from Berlin.